Guys, welcome back to the shop. Today we finally get a chance. I had to work all week, had Monday off, and that's when we started this knife project, and then I've had to work the rest of the week. So it's Saturday, and we're going to go ahead and do part 2 on this knife. We've got a little bit more work to do on the tang, and we're going to get that squared away first off, and then we'll go ahead and we'll start on our blade. Still got a lot of steel to move in that thing, but we're going to make a pretty big knife, bigger than what my forge can actually handle, so it's going to be interesting to see how we're going to be able to quench this thing. But we've got our forge warming up. I've got my little blocks of steel heating up my anvil surface. And again, appreciate you joining me in the shop today, and let's get to it. Alright, our anvil surface is all warmed up here, and we're going to work this tang a little more. Still a little bit on the thick side. I think we're about there. I think I want to clean up some of these hammer marks a little bit, and we're going to probably move to the blade. Alright, I think that's got our tank cleaned up pretty well. We're going to go ahead now and start moving some of that steel there. That thing works pretty good. Well, there went our handle. Doggone it. Alright, I'll get this welded back on and we'll be back. Okay guys, I think we're going to go ahead and let the grinder do the rest of the heavy lifting on this thing. Pretty straight here. Planished it pretty good, got most of the hammer marks out of it. You know, you can get caught up chasing those hammer marks. You know, the more you try to get rid of them, it seems like the more you make. And so at some point you got to say, okay, good enough. We'll let the grinder work on it, you know. I think I'm going to take one more heat, just make sure she's nice and straight, and then we'll anneal it. Well, our handle doesn't quite fit down in there, but we may have to anneal that handle again, that tang a little bit later before we are able to drill it or whatever. I've noticed sometimes working with this 5160, after annealing and grinding and that, and I go to drill my holes before I harden the knife, and I can't drill them, the bit won't touch it. I have to re-anneal the handle, tang area, to get the drill to go through it. So I guess we'll see what happens after that. That'll probably take a couple hours to cool off. Well, okay, so we're getting there. We've got us a knife-shaped object anyway. We've got her in the bucket there to anneal, and once that's annealed, we can get it on the grinder and start doing our rough grinds, and we'll cut that handle off. And I just thought I'd leave it on there when I stuck it in the bucket to anneal it because, one, it holds a little residual heat, might make it cool off a little slower, which helps, and for two, it's just easier to deal with it right now that way. And once it's cooled off, we'll zip that handle off of there and get to grinding. So stick around. We'll be back with some grinding and some shaping and see if we can't get this thing ready for some scales. So guys, while we're waiting on our knife to anneal, I've got some steel here that I ordered quite some time ago, and it's just been sitting around waiting for me to decide what I want to do with it. I've got two pieces of 1080, 1/8 by 1.5 by 12 inches, and we've got two pieces of 15 and 20, the same dimensions. Well, it's a little thinner. It's a little bit thinner this way than the 1080, but I thought we might cut these into, say 4-inch. Problem is, well, I'd want more layers than 4, but the problem is with my forge being a 1 burner, I have such a hard time. So what I think we'll do, I thought about just cutting this right in half and stacking these 8 layers, but I I just think I'd have a hard time once I started to stretch that out. And I want to do a twisted Damascus pattern, so it's going to need to come out almost square. And these are 1.5 inches wide, but stacked together, they're 1/2 inch. So what I thought we'd do is we'll cut these in 3 4-inch pieces, and we'll stack the whole works together, 12 layers. That should make it a square billet. So once it gets forge welded together, and we know it's solid, we can draw it out, you know, to whatever length I can heat in the forge, and keep it square. So we can throw it in our vise here and put a nice twist on it. And then I don't know for sure what I want to do with it after that. If I want to make a knife or maybe make some twisted Damascus bottle openers. Haven't decided for sure, but in the meantime, let's get this cut up and stacked up the way we want it, and we'll throw some tack welds on it to hold it together, and maybe we'll go ahead and get this forge welded together before while that knife is annealing. It takes quite a while for that to cool off in that bucket of floor dry. That's all I use. A lot of guys use that vermiculite. It's for gardening or whatever. Floor dry works just fine. It's just clay material basically. So we've got all our pieces cut and laid out here on the bench. The way it comes out, to do 12 layers, we've got 1080 on either end, 15 and 20, 1080, 15 and 20, oh I'm sorry, 1080, 15 and 20, 1080, 15 and 20, 1080, and then 2 pieces of 15 and 20 in the middle. That way we've got our 1080 on the outsides of our billet, because it's a heavier, it's thicker, and I think if we put the thinner 15 and 20 out there, we'd probably lose most of it on the outside just from our forge welding and shaping and what have you. So that's how we're going to lay it out. We're going to stack these up just the way they are, one after the other. And so our billet will be like that, like that, like that, that, 2 15 and 20s in the center, and then another 1080, 15 and 20, 1080, 15 and 20, and finally another 1080. So that's what our billet's going to look like. I don't know. That's going to be a seriously thick, very large billet. Okay, our billet's pretty hot. This first heat, we just want to flux it. And then we'll put it back in the fire. Man, that is hot. Then we'll put it back in the fire for a little bit and let that flux melt down in there real good. And next time we'll pull it out and we'll tack weld it. right. That's that for our first one. Wow, that's hot. Okay, we're going to put some more flux on this. And get it back in the fire. Oh. That puts out so much heat. Just using my flux spoon, it's burning the crap out of my hand. Well, I'm thinking she's welded, but we're going to go ahead. I don't believe there's any reason to flux it anymore because it should be all welded together. So we're going to just throw it back in the forge. Just give it one more weld, then I'm going to let it cool off, and I'm going to grind these MIG welds off of there because we don't want that garbage mixed in with our good steel. Well, I believe we're welded, people. So, I believe that welded together nicely. So we're going to go ahead and let this cool off. And I'm just going to grind off these MIG welds here. Get rid of that crappy steel. Well, alright guys and gals. We've got our billet all welded together here. I ground the welds off of it, and when I ground the welds off, I could see a couple of little places on the very edges here, because that 15N20 was a little bit narrower through here than the 1080 was, and when you try to weld that, if they're not even, they want to like overlap and create cold shuts. So what I did when I ground the welds off was I just ground the whole thing even on both sides, and once I got done grinding it even, I noticed that I had a couple of that I had a couple of little spots, one on each side, one or two on each side, that didn't look like the welds had taken very well. So I went ahead and I threw another heat on it, and of course I forgot to turn the camera on. We fluxed it up real good again, and gave it another real good hard weld. And I'm not seeing any lines anywhere in it now where it looks like it didn't weld. So I think we have a good solid Damascus billet to do something with now. Anyway, that wasn't our project for today. That was just something to do while we were waiting for this to anneal. I just threw it on the belt grinder a little bit just to clean it up some. Came out pretty good, I think. I wanted to leave a little bit extra back here because we're gonna put a lanyard hole back here and just leave some of this tang sticking out. You know, we'll put us a lanyard hole back in here, and then we're going to leave, you know, a small portion of this tang exposed behind the scales, I believe. And so I probably got just enough tang there to do what we want to do, but yeah, I think it came out pretty good. We got a lot of grinder work to do. I'll use that flat grinder that I have there that we repaired in that one video, and just get these sides smoothed up here pretty good. I'm not real concerned about it because it's not going to be a real fancy schmancy mirror finish type of knife. This is going to be a knife that can be used and abused, and we don't care if we scratch it, you know. So anyway, I think the overall shape came out pretty good. Of course, it's still way blade heavy because we haven't ground any bevels in yet. And I don't like to try to hammer my bevels in. I'm not very good at it, to be quite honest with you. And they seem to always end off, you know, further over to one side than the other. So I like to just leave my stock flat and planish it and get as many of the hammer marks, you know, the deeper hammer marks out of it as I can, and then let the grinder do the work. It's tedious. It's a pain in the butt. I hate grinding. I love hammering on that anvil and forging hot steel, but I hate the grinding part of it. It's just long and tedious, and trying to get your bevels straight and everything. I mean, what we did today and in the previous video of hammering this thing out, that's hard work, but it's easy, you know, in my book. That's the easy part. Now comes the hard part, making sure that it's these surfaces are nice and flat. I'm not sure what I'm going to do up here yet on this, along the spine where the flat will be, because, you know, we'll have our bevels come up. They'll come up like this and then come up to the point. But up here on the flats, I may leave some hammer marks and some evidence of forging up there, you know. And of course the tang, we don't, as long as it's flat enough that it'll accept your scales real nice and no gaps or anything, we don't care how it looks, you know. It's going to be underneath the wood anyway, so there it is. I know I kept saying we were going to do a knife, and we finally got one done. So pretty pleased with it. And now it's grinder work. But I have a party to get to tonight for my son's father-in-law's birthday tonight. So I've got to get cleaned up and get the heck out of Dodge. In fact, I'm probably already late. So I really appreciate you hanging out with me in the shop today. Had a good time. Glad we were able to finish shaping that knife. And we got us a Damascus billet to play with now. I wanted to go ahead and draw that out now that it's welded really well. I wanted to go ahead and draw it out and square it up nice and put a twist on it, but I'm just out of time. So maybe we'll do that tomorrow. I don't know, or another project. Probably work on the knife tomorrow. I want to get this knife finished up and done. I kind of get two things going at once, but while the knife, I knew that was going to take a couple of hours to anneal, and I didn't want to just sit around on my hands for 2 hours. So I figured we'd throw a Damascus billet together that we'll have for future use. Still haven't decided what we'll make out of it. We may do a knife. We may do something else. If once that's drawn out and twisted and done the way we want it, right now in the shape that it's in that billet, it's hard to tell, but we probably have enough to make a knife. It won't be as big as the knife that we made today, that we finished up today, but I think we'll have enough there to make a pretty decent knife out of if we wanted to. So be my first twisted Damascus. I've done Damascus before, but not twisted, so we're going to see how that all plays out. Anyway, thanks for being here. Always good to have you in the shop with me, and please hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up if you like the videos that I do, and we'll see you on the next one. Be safe. Get out to your shop and do something, and take care of yourself.